Hello, good day to you all. Good evening. How is everyone? I'm Dav. This is my show. I bring you the best of Twitter as far as I perceive it to be, and I talk about some of the more pressing issues in the American political arena. Namely, how likely is it that America will drag the rest of the world down into a global depression? How likely it is that 1 million people could die as a consequence of the untended, at a federal level, pandemic that's escalating to such significant levels that many hospital systems across American states may become overwhelmed with insufficient numbers of healthcare workers to attend all of the patients that require care. So that even if field hospitals are created in the car parks with tents and extra beds created, this wealthiest nation in the world may have inadequate numbers of trained staff to respond to people with pressing healthcare needs, which is incredible, sad, and is a function of having minoritarian authoritarianism in America. The fact that various political artifacts from the time of slavery have persisted in American politics and have given affirmative action to the votes of people whose worldview is a hereditary byproduct of rationalizing away slavery and rationalizing away the ongoing disadvantages that accrue to people of color in the United States. Not that anybody is condemned to a position, but that there becomes a higher statistical likelihood that you will die of COVID-19 if you're Black. Philippine nurses apparently comprise 30% of the deaths of nurses from COVID, but only 4% of the working population of nurses. So, look, it's a problem. It's a problem that there's so much discrimination in America and that there's so much political activism from people who invert that discrimination and presume that white people are the aggrieved party in the United States, that white people are more discriminated against than Black people, and who've taken that grievance culture and used it as a compulsion to keep someone in office who is a self-serving criminal who puts other people's lives in significant danger when he thinks it will advance his own interests personally and politically. So Trent is hoping that the vaccine will prove safe and effective and be widely taken up. There's more than one vaccine candidate. There's quite a few. There's the Pfizer, there's the Moderna, there's the AstraZeneca, and there may be others. Thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, Alan's here too. I didn't even notice that. Sorry, Alan. Hello. All right. So 4 hours ago, the breaking news was that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court dismissed the lawsuit from Republican Representative Mike Kelly and candidate Sean Parnell to deliver. They wanted universal mail-in voting to be declared unconstitutional in the state and to deny the votes of the majority of Pennsylvanians who voted by mail. So how many is that? Is that 6 million or 7 million Pennsylvanians whose votes they were trying to get thrown out? But in a big picture sense, perhaps Republicans are trying to have voting by mail dismissed as a methodology altogether, or a method of voting, because it makes voting easier. I think my husband just left. And my daughter's itchy. Oh, she probably has some chlorine from swimming. I've just been sent a message. I hope that was my husband going to get her. I can't stay for a long time today because I am in the middle of hanging out. Sheldon's suggesting that Trump will attempt a military coup as a last-ditch effort to keep in power. I haven't seen that, so share with me anything that you have about that, Sheldon. The last I saw was that General Milley was making a speech when the military museum was being opened to say that American soldiers swear an oath to the Constitution. Unlike other nations of the world, they do not swear loyalty to a nation's leader. They swear loyalty to this particular document, which enshrines the rights of Americans and enshrines various political things. So not only does the Pennsylvania court dismiss Mike Kelly's lawsuit, but they also dismiss it with prejudice, and they dismiss the order to block certification of the state's election results. And when you dismiss something with prejudice, I've only recently learned that means it's been extra dismissed. Don't bother to file an appeal. Although I don't think it precludes filing an appeal, but I think it's an extra firm dismissal. We'll talk to some imaginary legal expert in a minute to confirm that. In a separate concurrence to the per curiam ruling, Justice David Wecht notes of Representative Mike Kelly and his plaintiffs, they have failed to allege that even a single mail-in ballot was fraudulently cast or counted, just like Rudy Giuliani, the judge adds. Wow. So, yes, in the ruling, they note that Giuliani stressed the campaign doesn't plead fraud. This is not a fraud case. And so then again, in this case, the absence of fraud allegations to this matter, not to mention actual evidence of fraud, alone is fatal to the petitioner's claims. So the petitioners wanting to throw out or overturn mail-in votes, have fatally to their claims not alleged fraud nor produced any actual evidence of fraud. So I love that. That's a phrase from this ruling. Actual evidence of fraud. They're talking about its absence. Yep. How exciting. Now, the last thing we can do before I go is watch a Kelly Loeffler an ad outing Kelly Loeffler as essentially a criminal who's not in jail at present yet, because she's been trading on her advantage as a appointed senator. She's not an elected senator for the Republican Party. She was appointed, but who was she appointed for? So this is Georgia. Somebody must have died or resigned, perhaps. All right. And I know it's a concern that ads aren't always useful, and that it's important to do research to show that your style of ads actually resonates in the way you want it to with your viewing audience. And I know that's in a way because people associate footage of Donald Trump with often just liking Donald Trump. Sometimes the more they are exposed to footage of him, the more fascinated they become. But I think this ad doesn't feature any footage of him, so it's safe.
One senator in particular irks me, a Senator Kelly Loeffler, not elected, but appointed just a couple months ago.
Calls across the political spectrum for the resignation of Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler of Georgia.
Loeffler, her husband's the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange.
I know that sounds like a joke about rich people in an Adam Sandler movie. That's a real thing. He owns the stock exchange. So they're two regular down-home folks.
One of the first things they did after they found out just how bad the coronavirus would be during closed-door Senate briefings was sell a huge amount of stock.
You sold over $1 million in stocks in your own personal portfolio before the market went down.
They were making a bunch of moves in the stock market to make sure their portfolios were protected instead of making sure you were protected.
New congressional disclosures show that Loeffler sold far more stock than we initially knew.
$18.7 million in stock trades. While there are those who would dismiss it and say, well, she's worth so much more, I've never met a wealthy person who didn't want more money.
Not only did she sell stuff, but then she bought stuff, and one of the items she bought was to help people who have to work at home. Software.
There's a reason Kelly Loeffler's spending 25 plus or $30 million in this, because she don't want people to know about her past.
So she owns part of Atlanta's WNBA team, and there are calls for her to give up that ownership now.
Truth is, with Kelly Loeffler, her own ambitions and her own elite friends come first, and the president, the rest of us come second.
Folks, this woman is knee-deep in the swamp, and she just got there.
We should have leaders who actually respect people.
If Loeffler knew about these trades, she should leave office.
The voters of Georgia had the opportunity to ballot box you out.
So after the last ad that Midas Touch produced, apparently, she was... Whoa. I've got an ad thingy here. They were sent a cease and desist letter to say stop showing footage from Fox Network, etc. Because it does make it quite impactful, I think, to highlight that people from both sides of the political spectrum, and the media certainly does have a lot of people who speak very fervently from the right side of the political spectrum, that, yes, they don't like Kelly Loeffler either. They've in fact accused her of helping conspire with Dominion voting software to take down Donald Trump's preferred candidate for the Georgia state, so the Georgia Senate seat. Doug Collins, I think, was more Trump's friend. So the fact that they're already priming Republican voters to believe that the software, the voting machines used are inherently corrupt and shouldn't be used, and that the outcome of the election is already predetermined, so they shouldn't bother to vote. That's a problem for inspiring, enthusiastic Republican voter turnout. Not that I want any of us to be complacent, but it doesn't look promising for Republicans just in terms of dynamics for that situation. Isaacson resigned due to health issues, and then Brian Kemp appointed Kelly Loeffler to fill the position. And yes, I'm not going to say she's done, because as Sheldon notes, they're dumping tons of money to get these two Republicans into the Senate. But there's money, and then there's story and narrative. And when a story takes root in the public consciousness, you can't easily spend money to overcome it. I'm not saying that it has to be a true story, because I certainly think that in the case of Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham, too much of the populations of those respective states, Kentucky and South Carolina, are very immersed in a story about how terrible Democrats are. And it wasn't a straightforward matter to overcome that with money, regardless of how much Democrats put towards ousting the very dangerous and obstructive and deadly Mitch McConnell from his position of extraordinary power in the Senate, and Lindsey Graham from his position as well. Money didn't help. It's true, they only need one senator to keep the majority in the Senate. So Democrats do need that. We do need that magic of having so much voter turnout systematically across Georgia that we can affect a Democratic win for both seats, and then have Vice President Kamala Harris be able to cast a tie-breaking vote in those circumstances, giving Democrats control of the Senate and thus the ability to pass legislation for the good of the American people, as opposed to the situation we have now, where the HEROES Act, a stimulus measure passed 6 months ago by the Democratic-controlled House, has been languishing on his desk, so that he doesn't even have to damage his fellow Republican Senate careers by getting them to vote down a measure that is for the good of the American people. Exactly, 80 million Biden votes, because Americans want to live. So that's a very easy explanation. Republicans kill Americans and put American lives in jeopardy and American livelihoods in jeopardy. So during a pandemic, yes, sane people don't turn out so much to rallies, but brainwashed Trump voters who've been lied to about the degree of severity of the pandemic, they don't turn out, or they do rally because they don't believe that airborne transmission is a problem. They may even actively embrace the idea of putting their fellow Americans in danger. They think they themselves won't die, that they'll be protected by their access to health insurance and their whiteness. And they maybe appreciate on some level that, yes, Black Americans are disproportionately more likely to die of COVID than white Americans, which doesn't mean that there's not a substantial white collateral damage from the policies of willful neglect and active sabotage of healthcare messaging that emanates from Donald Trump and is reinforced and repeated by various Republican governors and Republican officials. Alan's birthday will be a big deal for America, yes. Oh, folks, I have to go. There was a move to try and preserve hospital capacity by allowing elderly people to go back to nursing homes. So yes, those decisions were not necessarily prudent, but they were also acting in a time where it wasn't widely known that the disease was airborne, and it was just thought that hand-washing protocols could protect people. So Trump knew that the disease was spread by airborne transmission, and he did not think it right to disclose that information to people because he preferred for Democratic governors to be walking in the dark and to be to not have information that they needed to help them save people's lives. So we block people who spread disinformation about the pandemic here because it is deadly. It does have a deadly effect on people's behavior. It stops them from making the necessary modifications that they need to do to prevent COVID spread. I've got to go, folks, but many in your city in Georgia say they're not voting because Trump told them it was rigged. That's awesome. You can call in and we'll chat sometime, Destiny's mum, because you've got on-the-ground information from Georgia, which is very exciting. All right, folks, see you later. And yes, Newsom will pick a replacement, hopefully a Black American woman as well, because there haven't been many Black American women in the Senate. There is such a thing as very systemic racism in the United States, which hopefully people are now coming to recognize more so that we can support countermeasures to reduce racism as an obstacle to American flourishing and American prosperity. And you need everybody to be able to have access to a seat at the table if you want the best people at the table, the best, most competent, most public service-oriented people. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Destiny's mum. Oh, yeah, of course, you're a twin. It's your birthday as well. December the 14th. Your lucky mother having two lovely twin boys. 2 in one day. Yes, well, probably because I should warn you, I won't be broadcasting tonight. I'm going to try and get to bed earlier tonight. Last night, I went to sleep too late. So take care, everybody. I'll see you again, maybe 24 hours time. All the best. Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Sheldon. Thanks, Jeff. Good night, and in advance, happy birthday to you boys. Take care.